Hi, this is Kurt Pringle. Thank you for tuning in to Talking Issues. Today, we're going to talk about probably one of my favorite subjects. You see, all I am deep down is a small businessman. When my family moved to California in 1968, my dad was in the laundry and dry cleaning business. So we set up laundromats and dry cleaners all over Southern California. Eventually got into the drapery and window covering business. But when you're in the dry cleaning business, you deal with wonderful organizations, agencies like the South Coast Air Quality Management District, which regulates all emissions for a lot of those small businesses. And where do small business people go for a voice? How can they be heard in a big bureaucracy? Well, there has become an answer because in 2008, an organization, it's called the LA County Business Federation, known as LA BizFed, under the direction of the founding CEO and continuing to this day, my friend Tracy Hernandez. So glad you're here, Tracy.
Thanks, Kurt. Good to see you.
And it is amazing. I mean, there's a ton of business organizations, but if you're a member of a chamber in a small city, or if you're a member of an ethnic chamber, or any other trade organization, sometimes you get pigeonholed in your area. And really, what you've been able to do is something really fantastic, and that's bringing all of those business organizations from LA County and even beyond into a single organization to speak on behalf of small and medium-sized businesses. So, what are the battles with LA BizFed? What is your focus there?
So, Kurt, as you mentioned, it's BizFed's a network of business networks. So, any existing chamber of commerce from any city, the business improvement districts from neighborhoods, it can be trade associations. If you're a car dealer or dry cleaner or a realtor, you have a trade association. It doesn't matter. We're just organizing all those into one. And the tagline is to strengthen the voice of business. And
Right.
because we like to remind people that actually business makes California work, people forget that. And
Right.
so
Exactly.
the interesting thing when you talk about dry cleaning business or drapery business or public affairs business,
Yes.
the fact is you're employing people.
Right.
Right? You start out, you employed yourself. You started, then you added one, two, three, and so on. And so what we're doing is we're doing two things. We're breaking down fears that business people or people employed people have of any government agency. So it doesn't matter if you have to go to your local city council or your city to get a permit or deal with any licensing for your business from the state, or you're just dealing with laws and regulations that get passed by the state legislature, even the US Congress. And then you mentioned you started with AQMD, or the Air Quality
Yeah.
Management District.
Right.
There's 2,000 regulatory boards and agencies just in California that deal with rules of how you can operate and what you can do as a business needing to employ your people, compete for business, and so
Right.
on. So we share intelligence. So we let these hundreds of thousands of business owners know what's happening because eyes and ears everywhere. We're better together. And so we've got eyes. When any elected body is considering doing something, we learn about it sooner. Then we organize people together with all different views, right? If you're a dry cleaner and you have 9 employees, your views might be different than if you're a restaurant and maybe have 2 restaurants and you have 38 employees. Or if you're a construction company and you have 285 employees and you're building homes, whatever.
Right.
Though you see the world differently depending upon where you're coming from. But we get together, and then I may have, well, you know this, but we haven't talked about it yet today, that I was a newspaper publisher
Yes.
before.
Right.
And
The
so,
LA
LA Daily
Daily
News,
News.
right?
Right.
And I ran newspapers all across the country. But I bring to what we're doing here is like kind of that accuracy of truth and information. What's really going on? Get out of the rhetoric business and truly understand if that tax or fee or ordinance, who's behind it? Why do they think it's a good idea? Who opposes it? Why do they oppose it? And then like sort of clinically look at cause and effect on all of us regular people.
Yeah. No, no. I mean, you created so much there. There's a lot of things I want to bounce off of. First off, I mean, you are a federation of other business organizations and such. So
Right.
there are what, 240, 250
Yeah,
organ.
252 different distinct
See,
organizations.
that's crazy, though. I mean, I look and I respect the local business chambers, but like here in Anaheim, it's always hard for me to contemplate, a dry cleaner and a car dealer or a hotel operator or a restaurant on the other end of town, what are those common bonds? And there are some, but not that many when you're looking at a smaller group. But when you look at a bigger group, there's a lot of restaurants that are a part of your
Right.
business fed, and a lot of car dealers, and a lot of hoteliers and hospitality organizations. So within that, you do get that critical mass of each of those individual trades, individual business types, right?
Right. But plus, what we get is when you talked about what we are trying to get people to understand the greater threads that bind us all,
Good.
that where we need to have more civic engagement and more say in what makes our communities either thrive or go down the hill.
Right.
And so part of it is we all employ people. Most of all the businesses have investment, or they're certainly paying rent.
Right.
So they have land use issues, or they have heating and air conditioning issues in their office, or they're running a manufacturing facility and they need water and they need their energy to work so that they can move their equipment. Or they own trucks and they're on the road, and so they need a transportation system that gets their products to their customers. So those are some things what
That
we're
are
trying
common
a common, but
threads,
people.
yeah.
So we get people to think of things they wouldn't otherwise,
Oh, that's good.
so they can speak up for each other.
Yeah, but really, so there are, I think, about 1.5 million businesses in California uh, that have 20 employees or less. And just your organization represents about 420,000
Right.
businesses,
Well, and how, let me be clear on when we say represent, because people use that term
right?
loosely
I like
and
it,
in
so
different ways.
that's okay.
No, but no, what ours is very formal.
Yeah,
So those 420,000 companies,
yeah,
they are dues paying members of those 252 business groups. So
right,
it's not just they exist or they have a license or they have a shingle out,
right,
but they actually have a formal relationship to a local business group because they pay dues to belong to that entity. Then we roll them up together. So I like it even more so
sure,
because it's sticky. We
right,
actually
right.
are connected to each other in a more formal way.
And how I mean, the state laws that change over the last couple of years. A few months ago, we had somebody on the show who is employment uh, attorney.
Okay.
So really talked about labor law and things like that.
Sure.
And there's so much in that one field.
Right.
But for you, you look at that field plus be it AQMD, air quality issues, and just doing business in not only the state, but in the county or in the individual city or within one of those 2,000 different regulatory organizations, right?
Right.
I mean, I should stop there. You mentioned 2,000 regulatory entities in California. Mention some of those agencies that maybe someone who's outside of that field has no idea what types of things are being regulated all the time.
Sure. So, for example, you may have heard of the Coastal Commission.
Yes, of
and so
course.
they look out for anything along the coast. They set rules and regulations on what you can and can't do. That's one. There's the California Air Resources Board. So anything that has to do with any policy or regulation that impacts the air, greenhouse gas emissions or the like, they have regulatory rulemaking authority. There's the California Public Utilities Commission.
Right.
And then you go into, there's water agencies. So that in our case in Southern California, the Metropolitan Water District, but underneath that, then there's hundreds of individual water agencies, and they set the rules of the road on how you use water, how you recycle, the cost of it, and so on.
Right.
Permitting new water sources or water supply or recycling. So there's water. Then there's transportation agencies and authorities. There's mosquito districts and abatement. I mean, it goes on and on.
Right. And I even, extend from the other regulatory type agencies. Someone who just wants to open a business. I was with a beer producer yesterday,
Yeah.
and of course, getting an ABC license and being regulated by county uh, health departments in every one of the counties. So he now has multiple beer establishments in multiple counties. So he's dealing with additional health departments. I mean, all of that. When someone, I mean, the last thing I would ever want to do is discourage someone from opening a business that addresses their passions, but they need to be aware of all of that regulatory structure before they do.
And that's why we're a one-stop shop. We often use that phrase. It's very helpful to people. So you don't have to know everything. You
Right.
don't have to be everywhere. You don't have to employ people to know everything and be everywhere. You come into BizFed, into the Federation, and then you get a lot of help. Everyone's looking out for each other. Everyone's sharing information. Between us, we can direct you to resources that can deal with your needs. You mentioned attorneys earlier, and that one avenue, which was in employment law. But there's also this thing called PAGA. Have you heard of the
Oh,
Private
gosh,
Attorney
yes,
General's Act?
of course.
Right, for small business. And so that's
Crazy.
just a massive shakedown
Right.
where they go one off to small business primarily. And they come in, they make a claim for any little tiny thing that possibly could have happened. And then instead of you be brought to your attention, and let me give you an example of when I say tiny.
Yes.
I have an employer, happens to be a restaurant, and they make their payroll every week to all their employees. And in their payroll system, when they were writing checks in their QuickBooks, they dropped the period off of Inc. It's
I see.
XYZ Restaurant Inc. INC period. Okay,
Right.
it was there, got dropped, whatever, someone typoed it.
Yeah.
They made their payroll on time every week to those employees, no description there. But through the Private Attorney General's Act, lawyers got to some employees,
Wow.
they filed a claim that it was mispaid. And so then by
By
the
an
time
unknown entity.
by not right,
Yeah.
and that it was, and so by the time they did resolve it, they got on it, but on the clock started ticking, and so then they started adding up all these charges. And this one restaurant, just for that thing, no one was harmed. It wasn't that anyone didn't get paid.
Right.
There was no harm. It got corrected, but in the time of that, it cost them $112,000 before they finalized that. And then the travesty is, you might say, it was for the employees because the lawsuit was made on behalf of the employees. 80% of the money went to the attorneys, and a couple of dollars went to the employees. But that the restaurant had to pay $112,000
Wow.
in shakedown. And I mean, it goes on and
Well,
on and
the
on.
attorneys, but also then the state takes a
Part of
cut
it, yes, they took,
of
yes.
that
They
after
do.
the attorneys get paid.
Right.
So the state of California says, thank you for doing this private attorney general action. Therefore, the state gets their share as well.
Yeah,
You know,
thanks
you
for
want-
clarifying that, because that's important, and that becomes a revenue line item to the state.
Well,
They should have.
they encourage it then.
Yeah, exactly.
right? I mean, that's
Exactly. So we're
that's
trying to
great.
fix that.
So you want to know another thing you can look to fix?
Tell me.
A friend of mine, so ADA issues, we all know the Americans with Disability Acts. And a friend of mine owned a flower shop on Harbor Boulevard over here, and it was in an older building, so it had steps going to the front. So a group was able to, on Google Earth, look at the front of all these businesses and then send letters to them and then say, you pay this or we will file a lawsuit against you. But that type of stuff's been going on for a long time. The new hit is in websites. And because ADA also includes people with
Visual impairment.
visual impairment. And a friend of mine just got a letter because he is sensitive to this because he has visual limitations, so he wants to make sure people can access a website. However, there was one little symbol, like maybe a Facebook button or something, that was not something you could go to and it would speak out what that button was for. So it was not even the whole purpose of the website. It was just a little button that allowed you to find more information on Facebook or something.
Sure.
He was challenged with that and had to pay a settlement because 100% of that website had to be accessible. And therefore, I mean, some of those challenges, not only the regulatory aspect, but some of the lawsuit challenges that small business could go through. I mean, you see where those might be mounting up in a certain area, and then you can take action through the federation that way.
We do, and then that way it's all a organized power and number situation,
Yeah,
right?
right,
And that's
yeah.
how we have to advocate. We get organized. One, we get the best information so that our fight is more effective and efficient and clear. Sometimes one off, you get a little cattywampus, you know.
of
So
course.
when you come in, you get a variety of views and voices.
And legislators and others,
Yes.
if you're just dealing with this one complaint from dry cleaner Kurt Pringle,
Right.
that may not be a system-wide issue or otherwise.
Right.
But if you have
But
a
if you
whole
take the time and
entity,
you figure it out
right,
and then you impact, then the solution will always be better. So we're in the solutions business because we're not just a say no business.
right,
We're in a, well, how do you fix it?
right,
And what is more sensible? And what's a common sense practical way? What's measurable and implementable? So we actually solve problems. We don't want to ignore problems that exist.
yeah,
So that's a big part of it. And then we have to we give each other cover. That's a big part of the federation model
that's
because
good.
it's so large, it's so diverse, it's geographically diverse, it's industry diverse, ethnic
Right.
diverse, size and makeup, it's corporations and privately held and publicly held, all that diverse. So then people are more, they feel like they have cover to speak out. They're not going it alone. They're not as
But that
risk
is so
averse.
important. I mean, dealing with developers or things when they have a terrible city they have to deal with. Many have told me they don't want to have their name associated
Right,
with it, and because they want to have more business in that city, so they don't want to
right.
complain about the planning department or the different issues that may be impacting in that
Right.
community. And the same thing would be true here. I mean,
Well,
I
it
wouldn't
makes
want a
sense, just like if,
regulatory.
yeah, if you're at risk and someone holds your permit, are they going to give it or not? And then they, get mad at you because your voice is out. That's real cause and effect. Like
Right,
that can really cripple your business or compete. So it's a very real thing, different than like the Labor Federation and organized labor. They're more free to speak out because they, no matter what they say to an office holder or regulator,
right,
they have their job.
right,
Okay, in business, you may or may not have your permit. You may or may not be able to operate, expand, or grow, or get things done,
exactly.
and compete. Or then social media takes over, and then you lose customers. Like, and you can't afford to go out at any given time and jeopardize half of your customer base by standing up for an opinion. So that's this giving cover is really important.
Yeah,
And so
very
then,
good.
if it's a dry cleaner issue, we get the restaurant owners to stand up for them. If it's a realtor issue, then we have the car dealers stand up. It's like this thing where there's so much more balance. If it's a manufacturing issue, then we have the hoteliers stand. And that way, then you can. It's all about getting better information and better ideas and solutions adopted and stop the really bad ones. And so, whatever means you have to get there, that's what we're doing.
Yeah, and one of those bad ones over the last year, I mean, it was a battle that was at the AQMD for a long time, and finally it got enough attention, I think, from different business interests. It was the no gas water heaters.
Oh, and speaking of dry cleaners,
Yes,
we have the Dry Cleaner Association in BizFed, and they are awesome
yes.
people. And so we were the one BizFed because again we had all the different sectors. So how does a water
Also,
heater
also the restaurants, right? I mean, yeah,
apartment owners? So
right,
that's what happened is you see a water heater that's natural gas convert to electric. Okay, you're like okay. That makes sense. Then you get into the details of like the size is different, literally the construction of the room and the facility and your piping in the house. All those things are different. The
right.
costs are different. So then when we started educate, got to start with education. We started letting people know what it meant. Then that's when apartment owners all of a sudden went, oh, I have to pay attention to this because every single one of my apartments, my
So it's not
building.
just the tanked water heaters, which I think some of us understand that if you're burning gas all through the day to maintain the water in that tank at a certain degree, that probably has a little more emissions than a tankless water heater, which only turns on when you use the water and it's very hot and gets it. But the AQMD was proposing banning all of them and
Yeah.
only having electric powered heat pumps or something like that as the only way to heat water. So coming from a dry cleaning business, when people press clothes, that comes from steam presses,
Sure.
which means you have to have a boiler. And yes, I know how hot that room would get when that boiler was going in the middle of the summers, but you have to have steam to be able to make sure your jacket looks nice.
Sure.
And
And the
and
other
you
thing,
showed that
Kurt, on that,
coalition though, that
we
you
did.
demonstrated that a bigger coalition of multiple trade groups, multiple industries that are affected by that, and that voice became, very loud and powerful.
Well, and we had to start with the air district themselves, the staff themselves. And so what we did was, you'd think it would be easy and welcomed.
Mm-hmm.
And it actually took us months and months and months. And we had to go meet with staff in person and with executives. We had to do several emails, requests, phone calls, and all that. Finally, what we did was say, let us take you, the staff writing the rules, to on site visit the properties and the
Right.
businesses impacted so you can understand what you want to regulate and change. That makes sense, right?
Yes,
Okay.
exactly.
Okay. It took us 10 months to get a response. And we then promised, which we did, set up 10 different industry sectors, 10 different tours so they could get out. We did all the work for them
Right.
so they could go see.
Yes.
So that was eye-opening and important. And then we had to communicate solutions. And like you were talking about a ban, it wasn't just a go forward, like if you're building a new building or a new business or whatever, it was current and going back. And it's like, again, where's the sensibility? You
Right.
might want to do it for the future, but how do you unwind and then come into any given business? Most of them are on tight margins, few percentage points,
Right.
and then require a complete retrofit just to keep doing what you're doing.
And not just for business. That rule affected houses.
It
So in the middle of the night, I mean, you get up in the morning and you turn on your shower and it's cold water and you realize, okay, my water heater's busted. But really, that rule required, if you banned gas, is you can't go to Home Depot and get a replacement exactly the way it is, but you'd have to go get a new type of system, which is mainly all power, and sometimes electricity would require rewiring or relocating that facility or getting a city building permit to put it outside.
Right.
Because in that mobile home that my grandmother lived in for many years, she could not have put it inside to replace the traditional water heater. I mean,
And
not
even
knowing all
inside,
of
the
those
shape was
steps.
different.
Yeah,
So talk
exactly.
about permit, like you have to bust down a wall and change a thing, like that's
Right.
all permitting, and you know how you get backed up? Yeah.
Yeah, but see, that is really the benefit of the federation, right? To be able to bring all these voices, so it's not just this person over here, again, me whining about that, but it really demonstrates that broader impact. To be honest, I was involved in that a little bit.
Okay.
I remember sitting down with some of the AQMD staff, and this one fellow with a tankless water heater. He said, we can get it down to virtually no parts per million. Now, if you're burning from a traditional tank water heater, you could have hundreds of parts per million, but he could get it down, I think he said between 8 and 10 parts per million. And the response from staff was, that's not good enough. It has to be 0 parts per million. So, if they are fighting to get to no emissions, then all of it, I mean, of course, nobody's talking about how does the electricity get generated. That's a subject for a different day. But that followed along the same path as the earlier uh, toe tipping in of eliminating gas stoves and gas ovens, though, too, which never really made it to that level. But I think your battle
Well,
and
it didn't
others,
make it because we also had to engage in that.
right?
Like just
Exactly.
and that impacted just a lot of restaurant owners, for example.
Right.
There's a lot of kind of food that definitely works better to be cooked with fire,
Right.
and to manage that.
Well, you'll see in there, that's only a gas stove that I use. So, that's, no, but it's critical. I mean,
And again, we're looking for sensibility, Kurt. Is just again, we're not an all or nothing situation.
Right.
And we don't think anyone should be. So if we want to transition over time, and as things are new or being built or replaced, things like that, we all live here too. We're all raising our kids here. We want clean air, water. We want safe sewer streets, parks. All that good stuff.
right.
Want to see the air, but what you just said though was interesting, where the person you gave the example, you got almost all the emissions out, almost
Right.
all of it,
Right.
and yet the regulator in that case said, no, I'd rather do not accept that and move ahead for the next 5-10 years of going to almost zero, and that improving the lives of people.
Right.
You start going
Exactly.
from wherever you're at now, lower it to almost nothing, do that for the next 10 years.
See, I think that's much of the battle, right? I mean, if it's I know politically where you are, and you're a person who really wants to find all sides of government working together, all sides of political parties, finding that, moderate, sensible, centrist path.
Right.
I don't want to put words in your mouth, but to be
Go for it.
honest, that regulatory community is at the point of, in some cases, all or nothing. Therefore, we want to get to full transition quickly, as opposed to we want to be moving in a positive direction. And I guess historically, for my time in the legislature and stuff, there's very few drop dead dates that everybody said, Well, we are going to get to that drop dead date to eliminate this or stop that, or you had a kind of a gradual step to be able to move in those directions as opposed to make one giant leap and somehow get there and accept all the disruption within the business community or in the marketplace or within the individuals' lives.
And obviously it's not working for people. You heard like
Right.
the crescendo of things being so unaffordable, period, in
Yes.
California.
Right.
So whether it's your house to rent or buy or grocery store, whatever you're
Or
buying,
gasoline,
or
we'll see that soon
gasoline.
enough, right?
And it's already, how
Yes.
whenever you travel, we
Yes.
travel, and you go to any other state and you're like, oh my gosh, it's like half as much, for gas. We get like just start expecting the things that we don't have to expect, that
Right.
what we pay our energy bills and, for electricity, anything, it's like just so much more. And it's more and more and more on top of everything. And then all of us who employ people, then you have to charge more for like all the wage battles that are going on. And, does that help or hurt, in the long run?
Right.
Things just have to pencil out. Money doesn't grow on trees and fall from the sky. So there has to be a reasonable dynamic between consumers and what businesses can produce, and people, can earn good wages, but they have to afford to live here so that they stay here and then we grow here.
Yeah.
Because we can't hollow out the middle. So that's what we're very concerned with, is
Totally.
not hollowing out the
Well,
middle.
and a lot of those are small business people, someone who is a single individual that's created a business line of some sort, who then becomes successful that can hire more people. Usually they don't
Exactly.
hire at the very top end of the pay scale either. Those small businesses have to grow and build and define themselves. I mean, where have you, I mean, the talk today is so focused on technology, the future, AI.
Sure.
Where does the biz fed get involved there?
Yeah, so there's a ton of policy right now. So
Right,
you mentioned AI, I'll just
right,
go there because technology drives all of us. Anyone, whether we're just regular people or we own a business with 5 employees or 5,000 employees. So we use it for our work to better our efficiency, our knowledge, our
hmm
ability to compete, and so on. So, and it's California. So we have all these company, everything was created almost, everything was created here, and we'd
exactly.
like them to stay and operate and grow more great jobs here. But people get nervous and they freak out. So again, remember I keep coming back to the sensibility, kind of common
Right,
sense thing.
exactly.
So I think there's like 52 bills just alone this year in your old state legislature where
Yes.
you were at, just on trying to regulate AI. And so again, think about it. AI doesn't have a city boundary or county boundary or states. It's really kind of a national thing, and California is trying to figure out what to do. Then they want to stop it before they know what it is. And then what we do, we come around and just put it into real basic things. You're running your business. We talked about a website. You were talking about that earlier, and just how you don't even know all the things you use AI for. We don't. If you have a
Right,
phone, a smartphone, that's AI all day long. You're talking to it, you're getting your directions,
right.
you're facilitating how you do customer fulfillment, and you're doing delivery, and they buy stuff on your website. All that's AI. So um, a lot of the rule that people who freak out and get all, nuts about things, and then they want to go to the extreme, would just kind of shut all that down. They don't even know what it means. It's like,
Or
okay,
where it's going.
where it's going to go.
Yeah,
And
exactly.
so we're definitely having to speak up. And the legislature created the CPPA, the California Private Protection Agency,
Right.
yet another regulatory agency with this unelected authority, another appointed board, and they're trying to do rulemaking. Again, there's no benchmarks or sensibility. So we're speaking up, we're bringing in people of all different shapes and sizes who
Good.
are using it, and then communicating so then the proposed regulation can be more sensible or take a beat. It might not be time yet for it
Right.
because we have to learn more. And at the same time, we want all of that economic, investment to
Yes.
stay, come, lead in California. We don't want it to run it off to somewhere else.
You really did hit that on the head. During my legislative time, I coined my personal phrase was a press release legislator. So once you see something in the news, there's a legislator out there that wants to introduce something. So that might be okay if you're trying to immediately try to stop something bad, but in most cases, if you just see it in the news, that may not give you all the information, be it the
Right,
future of AI, where the
right,
technology may go. So just because you see this growth of a new technology doesn't mean you need to put legislative fences around it right out of the bat. I mean, and that's the challenge, and unfortunately, that's what a lot of legislators do.
Well, and you talk about legislate by press release. Now it's legislate by social media
Yeah,
post.
no, exactly.
So if you have a post on
Or by next door,
Instagram or
next
X
door.
or
Yeah,
next door, all those,
right.
and so that is just, I mean, it's okay to communicate, share information, but we elect office holders to be mature, sophisticated leaders, and they run for office making a deal with the constituents and the
Right.
people they serve.
Exactly.
They're in public service. They work for us. We
Right.
don't work for them. We have to just keep this in being that they need to have a backbone, intellect, and get people around them so they can rise above the chatter that's incessant all day, every day, and not just react to whatever there's some blow up on social and all of a sudden now I have to do something. No, if you can pay attention to that, it's fine. But take a beat and learn about it, have a backbone,
Right.
tell people what they need to know, be in service of those that elected them.
Exactly. So through the 18 years, you've had this organization growing and building. And
Yeah.
so, what are some of those big successes that you can point to?
Oh wow, Kurt. We have successes all the time. We're big in the business of we start with
Solving things,
information.
yeah.
Well, we start with information alerts. You'll look at BizFed because you see,
Yes.
you see information, info alerts. Then if there's something to do, there's action alerts, and then our very favorite are victory alerts.
Yes.
So what have we done, and where did the victory come? And the best ones are those that people think are impossible. Why are we even battling? Because it's a done deal.
Right. By the way, I think
So many of those.
the gas water heaters was one that
Oh,
the
yeah.
AQMD had already voted to adopt it
Yeah.
by the time
Yep.
the tide turned the other way after they had voted that way
Right.
to fully support it.
Oh, there's just so many examples. So that was a regulatory thing. There's county issues where the county board works on things. Again, sometimes it feels like it's the dark of night stuff where
Right.
there's maneuvering. There was one where we actually made it materially better at the county. It was a water a water issue that was going to be a tax issue for water reclamation and cleanliness and so on. So intention was fine, but it was one of those dark of the nights at like the end of the year when no one was paying attention and they were going to put a vote and not have a vote of the people, and it was a tax. And so anyway, we had to call timeout, like,
Right.
because we saw it, call timeout. We then had to get to the table and say, well, what are you going to raise the money? You're going to increase it. It was a tax. What are you going to raise the money for? What's it for? And they're like, well, we're first going to get the money and then we'll figure out the projects. We're like, no, it doesn't work that way.
Right.
You go to the public,
Right.
yeah, get a plan, work out what you need the money for. How is it going to be structured? Where's it going to go? Then how much do you need? Then go ask the voters. Then have measurements and benchmarks to which you achieve goals or you don't, and you adjust. So that was one thing that in that case we had to stop it at those early stages. It then took several years and it went down the path we encouraged it to, and it came back. Then it was in much better shape and the deal with the taxpayers was better and it passed. So that's an example of something of import where we shed light, then we brought sensibility, then it went through, it was way better for all of us.
Right.
And-
Business and residents.
Exactly.
Right.
Yeah.
So it's everybody talks about businesses leaving California, and there certainly we see a lot of big businesses, major companies leaving California as their headquarters, and I think that's a tragedy. But a lot of small business people can't leave. I mean, they're here. I mean, their families are here. Their business is regional or connected within the community of which they're a part. So, what are you hearing are some of the current challenges for small business to operate in California? I mean, through new legislation, new issues. You mentioned PAGA. We talked a little about the wage and hour issues on labor law issues. But what are some of the other things you see
So
are
some
challenges?
things that aren't as obvious, we talked a minute ago about housing, cost of housing. So
Right.
housing affordability for employees, for a
Right.
business to
Right.
operate, to hire people, or be closer to where they operate so they can recruit the talent they need to, compete and do the service. So that's interesting. That really comes up as a high item, is the fact that their people can't, or themselves, but
Right,
their
yeah,
people can't
exactly.
afford to
Live in
pay
the market,
rent or
yeah.
live in the market or buy a home. And so we're working on that all the time now. Housing is a real tricky bugaboo
Right.
in our state.
Yes.
And you come from local government too, so I can talk to you about local government and state government. But most housing decisions are at the local level, at the city council level. The hard thing for the poor city council people is that there isn't one neighbor that wants anything to change next to them. And it doesn't matter if you're in a super low income neighborhood and a moderate or a high end. It doesn't matter. If you have a home of any shape or sort, you do not want anything to change next to you.
Yes.
You don't want either more density, less density. You don't want anything torn down. You don't want anything built. You don't want anything changed. You like
Right.
your neighborhood. You're there. You like what you have, and that's it.
The
So
lower
they
income neighborhood in Anaheim, I remember it to this day. A couple of the people in very old apartments and very low income immediate neighborhood, but certainly in a couple of those key apartments, uh, these people came and spoke to me about why they did not want any gentrification in their neighborhood. And to them, the definition of gentrification was building something new. We don't want any new buildings. We don't want this to be developed. There's no proposal to tear down their apartments.
Yeah,
But the
they don't want
proposal
anything.
was to build on some vacant lots, and they didn't want anything. So your point, I really never had thought about, you look at NIMBYs and you just think it are people who've owned homes for a long time and want to protect their property values and their investment and not necessarily see the importance of building additional housing so that you have a broader community opportunity for all those industries that are in those towns, like Anaheim here with the hospitality industry. But it does go all the way across the spectrum,
It's
doesn't
a whole
it?
spectrum. And even in California, this interesting thing is though neighbor to neighbor doesn't like anything. I established that. We used to, so then you have the most fierce complaints. So the council people just feel barraged, because everyone hates on them, no matter what it is, rich or
Right.
poor and in between. Okay, so then we used to build, kind of edge. You'd go out a little bit, so you weren't up against neighbors, that didn't like anything to change, and you'd build, suburban areas and neighborhoods and all that stuff and build. Okay, so now people don't want any piece of land that doesn't have a home on it of any shape or size to have anything on it. So then you have those neighbors which would say, don't even build on the edge. You can only build in the interior of a town.
Right.
Now, we have a great member, we have a lot of members in BISFA that work on housing all the time, but one has done the analysis in her firm. And in California, we're only built on 6%, 6% of our land mass in California has built environment. 6. And so if we went to 7%,
Yeah,
8, 9%, most states have in the teens or the 20%, So no one uses too much land, but most states are in the high teens into the 20% of land developed. California 6. So you'd say, well, that's great. I love California. I like all the open space. Great. Okay. But we could modestly, if we just went from 6 to 8%, kept it under 10,
Right.
we could build the 3 million housing units that we're short and house the people that need it and bring down affordability. So like my kids are 25 and 26 and both left Los Angeles, grew up here in LA, their total life, and found homes other places because they're like, there's no way I can afford the rent. I don't want all of my income to go to that. I can't survive there. And so we have to fix that.
Yeah, I actually think that is one of those interesting turning points, and it's the young professionals, their parents, or the people who support and encourage them. If those young professionals start saying, "Hey, I don't see a future here if I can't buy a house here,"
Right.
and we have to figure out how to make that work. And I believe there's plenty of ways, and I'm not one to always put positive comments out towards the governor, but in this past budget, to basically exempt some new housing development that is being developed on a piece of property that's already been developed. In other words, converting a shopping center to a residential. You've already measured traffic impacts. You've already measured air quality impacts. So why does that development, why are you creating that additional hurdle? Not just in cost, but in time. I mean, that environmental process will take another year or two that you're adding on to that regulatory hurdle before someone could build to replace a closed down shopping center.
Right. And you meant, infrastructure, roads and lights and sewers and all that exists. So the other thing is too, we're big super fans to tackle this issue Remember I talked about giving cover to business owners? So
Yeah.
I really feel like we have to give cover to council people and mayors too,
Right.
because they take that heat on the front line. Now they don't like this. I think it helps them, but they don't like it. Is to have the state give more by right authority on things they've already approved. For example, you're the city of Anaheim, you set out your general plan. What's the zoning requirements for the whole city? What can you zone to what level? How many housing units? How much commercial? How much industrial? You've made that decision as a city council and a mayor. So if it comports within your general plan or a specific plan, if you're a big city and have neighborhoods, then why should it then succumb back to start over and have all those approvals? You've already said within these requirements. So we're
Right.
saying the state legislature, you know, give that approval by right if it comports already, kind of what you were talking
Yeah,
about,
right.
if it's already developed, it's in the plan, then let it go. That can help give cover to the mayors and the council people because the neighbors still aren't going to necessarily like it. So it takes the heat off them. They can say, "Oh, it's the state made me do it,"
Right. Yeah, no, I've seen
and
that.
that
A
it's
couple
like,
examples, but you bring up a very good point, and someone who has LA in your business name, um, after all the LA fires, from a business perspective, where are the challenges of seeing those houses being replaced with, let's say, the exact same size or modestly larger homes on that piece of property that had a home on it before?
Mhm.
What do you see from your business perspective in LA? What's taking so long?
Mm, it's these things are complex. So part
Yeah,
of it
right.
is, so in specific in LA, the mayor did do the executive order where you can, if you build the same to 10% more, you have approval to do it. So that's like a tight range. Some people would say, well, if you lost everything, you have to pay for it because your insurance isn't necessarily covering all this. I have to invest more. Why can't I build a little bit more? I had a 3 bedroom, 2 bath. Why can't I do a 4 bedroom and have an office? Because now I work from home.
Right.
That's a little bit more than 10%. So there's these kind of battles too. And what's your investment? It's your money. Government's not giving you money to build
Right.
your house.
Right.
So, I mean, it's that kind of stuff, I mean, they're hustling to clear, the debris and the toxic thing, but then just take the scale and the scope. Those streets and neighborhoods aren't meant for massive construction. That many employees, that many construction trucks, that much material
But I'm
coming
hearing
in.
it's in the hundreds, though, out of
Oh, that
thousands
they've
have burned
approved?
down, just
Yeah, out of
a
16,000.
couple hundred permits being issued at
Yeah.
this. And yeah, I totally, I can understand the huge aspect of trying to replace thousands of homes at somewhat the same time, but
Hmm.
um, I just don't
Why
think
not more?
from the
Yeah.
outside we're seeing that. Wondering if that's just government, is it state regulatory challenges, is it
It's a
local government?
combination. It's people, their insurance, their ability, their choice. Like you're sitting there, you lost your home. Are you going to rebuild or not? Like you're
Sure,
making your own decisions. You're
right,
gaming
exactly,
out your own bandwidth. You're dealing with the insurance company what you can and can't do. So it's not just the city saying you can build that or not.
yeah.
And then you add that in, and then you add the federal and other
Or the coastal
agencies
commission,
and
or the
right.
uh, all the water runoff issues and all
Right.
of the
And then
new
we have Altadena,
standards.
and we're dealing with the county, and,
Right.
and that whole makeup. So we're just, and speaking of AI, there are some bright spots.
Yes.
So I don't
Right.
have to be too completely sad, but for example, an AI tool has been invested in by the private sector, embraced by city government and state government to help this whole permitting go faster with more effective tools to process through the city permitting and the communication, because you also go through many departments.
Right.
When you're
Exactly.
built, you've done if you've done any construction, remodeling, or building from scratch.
Yes.
There's many departments, so AI can speed that up. So 'cause you know how sometimes you get along and you get to you're following your steps, and you get to department 3 and you get to hurdle 4. Then you get to 6, and 6 says, "Oh no, you did number 2 wrong. Go all the way back to the beginning." Right. So
Right.
this tool is going to work to eliminate that. So when you go in order, you're not sent back to the beginning, things like that. We'll see how it goes. It's
Yeah.
early.
I think it's one of those tests of government, though, that we're seeing. And can the governments pass the test of when you're in a crisis, when it's impacts so many people's lives? what can you do to cut through it all and make sure that individual can do what they want to do with their property when they're facing that type of tragedy? And
Right.
I
Err
don't
on the side of getting out of the way.
exactly.
Right? That's what we say. That,
For
that
business
err on
and
that
for
side.
yeah,
Just get out of the way
exactly.
and then deal with, I mean, that is the better of all the
And
solutions.
for all the business groups, if they boiled it all down, Tracy, to just government should err on the side of getting out of the way, I think that would be a great motto somewhere. But
There you go.
you are such an important business organization, and I totally respect you for all that you've done and all the businesses you serve and all the people within those businesses that are affected by your activities. So thank you very much for coming in today and sharing that LA BizFed perspective.
You're welcome, Kurt.
Thank-
Thanks
thank
for
you.
all that you're doing. This is
you.
great that you're like pressing on. You've done so much in your life already, and the fact that you like don't ever take a heartbeat and you want to have people come
Well,
in
I
and
get to
you're
talk to
doing
good
it.
people like you.
That's good. All
Thank
right,
you.
see you.